This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Iranian oil exports, which have been on a rising trend while talks make progress on reviving the 2015 nuclear deal, have dropped so far in May, according to 3 assessments, reflecting a lull in demand from China. Tehran's oil exports have risen since late 2020, despite U.S. sanctions toughened under U.S. President Donald Trump. Joe Biden's administration took office in January, pledging to rejoin Iran's nuclear deal with world powers, which Trump had quit. A trade source said on May 14 that Petrologistics, which tracks oil flows, told its customers Iran's crude exports dropped provisionally to zero in May, from around 703,000 barrels per day, BPD, in April, citing slowing intake from Chinese independent refiners.
Indian refiners and at least one European refiner are re-evaluating their crude purchases to make room for Iranian oil in the second half of this year, anticipating that U.S. sanctions will be lifted, company officials and trading sources said. Former U.S. President Trump abandoned the 2015 Iran nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on Tehran in late 2018. Until then, Europe and Turkey had consumed close to 500,000 barrels per day, BPD, of Iranian oil. India, Iran's biggest client after China, was buying as much as 480,000 barrels of oil per day in the fiscal year beginning April 2018.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Britain's emissions trading system, ETS, kicked off on Wednesday as the UK strives to eliminate net emissions by 2050, with carbon prices reaching over £50, $70.77 per tonne, and making the cost of polluting in Britain higher than in the EU. The ETS is a method of charging power plants and other industrial entities for each tonne of carbon dioxide they emit. Britain launched its own market to replace the European Union's ETS after it left the bloc. The benchmark December 2021 UK allowance (UKA) contract first traded at £50.23 per tonne before easing to trade at £45.25, $64.08 per tonne by 14:30 GMT.
Oil prices dropped over $2 a barrel on Wednesday on renewed demand concerns as coronavirus cases in Asia rise and on fears rising inflation might lead the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, which could limit economic growth. Prices fell even though U.S. data showed a smaller than expected build in crude inventories and a bigger than expected decline in gasoline stockpiles. Brent futures fell $2.62, or 3.8%. to $66.09 a barrel by 11:15 a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, 15:15 GMT. It settled 1.1% lower on Tuesday after briefly climbing to a 10-week high over $70 during the session. Next, we have the top news in metal market. China will strengthen its management of commodity supply and demand to curb unreasonable increases in prices and prevent them being passed on to consumers, the country's cabinet said on Wednesday, as it urged coal producers to boost output. Prices for commodities such as coal, steel, iron ore and copper, of which China is the world's biggest user, have surged this year, fueled by post-lockdown recoveries in demand and easing liquidity globally. But they extended recent losses after the cabinet's latest comments. China will step up adjustments on the trade and stockpiling of commodities and reinforce inspections on both the spot and futures markets. State broadcaster CCTV reported the cabinet meeting chaired by Premier Li Keqiang is deciding.
Investors looking for exposure to early-stage gold mines can buy millions of dollars of the precious metal at a discount on a digital exchange in a new development which will also provide funding for miners to develop their assets. Physically backed products such as exchange-traded funds, ETFs, are one way for investors to access gold investments, but they don't offer discounts or the capital miners need to develop their operations. Mines in Australia and Ecuador have made available for sale around $93.50 million worth of gold at current prices, discounted to $80 million, on the digital metal exchange, DMX, an online trading platform based in Australia and launching in June.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Argentina's grains exports were bogged down on Wednesday after port workers launched a strike over what they described as a lack of COVID-19 vaccinations among members, the head of the Port and Maritime Activities Chamber told Reuters by telephone. In a statement, the port worker union said they had launched a strike that will run until late Thursday. Dock workers who prepare ships to sail were among those on strike, along with tugboat captains and sailors who guide cargo ships to and from port, according to the statement. All shipping is stopped, Guillermo Wade, head of the chamber said.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.